Prime Minister Olmert, I'll start with a question that you've probably asked a lot, which is, what would you have done differently after October 7th?
This is, in a way, an unfair question, because it provides me with an opportunity to say everything I want to say now, based on the experience and the lessons and the visions that we have gone through in the last couple of years. And I can be very smart now and very sophisticated, and who can judge me, you know? But I'll tell you what, I kept saying, I thought at the beginning, and at that time I just thought it by myself. I didn't even share it. I didn't, in the first month, I didn't make any public comment at all. But I think in retrospect, and based on what I felt at the time, I may have said, which I don't think would be very easy politically, but that the smartest, the most responsible way to handle it at the beginning was to try and see if there was a tangible chance of making a deal at the beginning, bringing back all the hostages for an Israeli commitment not to respond at that time. I know it sounds crazy, because considering the emotions and the across the world, not just in Israel, across the world, when President Biden and Prime Minister Sunak and Macron and Chancellor Scholz and so many of the world leaders said Israel has a right to respond and Israel has a right to reach out for the Hamas, knowing that Hamas are hiding inside the most densely populated area perhaps in the world, which will cause inevitably major collateral damage and lots of non-involved people killed. And yet they all said it and they all meant it, and they kept defending the right of Israel to counter attack at that time. And yet, considering what we have been through and the emotional burden, the moral burden of the suffering of the hostages, it may have been more responsible to refrain from immediately reacting in the most aggressive way, which we did, and rather see if there was a chance. And I heard at that time that there were some signs coming from Qatar that there may have been an opening for a deal to bring back immediately all the hostages in return for, of course, a supervised commitment not to respond at that time. So maybe that would have been one thing that I would consider. And I say this is something that I felt at that time, but I didn't share it because I didn't want to say anything publicly. I mean, it was almost useless to say anything at that time. The other thing, and perhaps this is the most important and most significant, from very early on, maybe 2-3 months after the beginning of this war, I kept asking publicly in every possible avenue, in every channel that I had access to, what is the vision of Israel for the day after? It was obvious that Israel is more powerful militarily, that we can defeat Hamas, not defeat, not a total victory. I mean, whatever it means, I don't know, but defeat in a very, very significant way militarily the Hamas, and kill almost everyone there and eliminate the leaders as we did. I kept asking, okay, let's assume that we succeed in the most, the greatest possible way, and there will not be one Hamas fighter left alive, okay? There will still be 2.5 or 2.2 million Palestinians in Gaza. What are we going to do? Are we going to have a military control, permanent military control over Gaza? Are we going to occupy Gaza? Are we going to deport them? Are we going to resettle there? Or are we going to have a different vision altogether, offer a political horizon that can offer a chance to somehow pull out from these endless hostilities between us and them towards something that may offer hope for peace, for reconciliation, for cooperation, for compromise. And that is one thing which the Israeli government refrained from doing since then until today, until this very minute.
So if Israel had not, if there had been a deal, Israel had gotten the hostages back. And again, it's as you say, it's hard to imagine politically it would have been possible, and agreed not to attack. What then? What would be what would have been the if that deal had been possible to have been made with Hamas still there then in Gaza? What then? What would you have done then?
Well, first of all, saying this, the experience that we had with Hamas, and I guess that would have probably been valid at that time as well. The Hamas would have been swept by their euphoric, exaggerated feeling of total victory, one can say, which would have led them into more provocations and more hostilities. Or again, assuming that they would have at that time not been affected dramatically by any counteroffensive of Israel. So they would have been left with all the rockets, with all their launchers, with all the leaders, with all the commanders, with all the fighters, and so on and so forth. So that wouldn't have provided the Israel with the kind of a peaceful resolution of that crisis at that time, but it would have probably established a better basis for a future confrontation with Hamas under much more comfortable circumstances without that terrible burden of the hostages on the one hand, and also without the urge to destroy everything and eliminate everything and dispose of everything smells Palestinian in Gaza, because without the pressure, the emotional pressure, the weight of the absence of these, at the beginning 250 and subsequently less and less, but still quite a few Israelis held hostage by the Hamas, we may have been more prepared to consider in a better environment also a political process that has no alternative at the end of the day anyway.
So tell me about that political process. So let's say there had been a deal. The hostages are gone from Gaza, and then Israel launches a military.
Oh, but I'll tell you, Peter. I think this will be unnecessary. I mean, it didn't happen, and
Right.
I told you at the beginning that this is an unfair question because
Right.
I can now fantasize about many things. Doesn't matter.
Right.
We have now there is, for instance, now there is a chance. Now there is a good, genuine chance that there will be a deal. That's what I hear today, that the Prime Minister was very flexible in his original demands about the continued Israeli military presence in the Morag axis in Gaza, and therefore probably there may be a good chance for an agreement, and that which will provide us an opportunity to get back the hostages and so on. Again, the main question arises, still hangs on. What are we after? Are we after what Ben-Gvir and Smotrich want, which is to build a humanitarian camp in the south of Gaza, to deport a large part of the population, at the beginning 600, then subsequently perhaps more, and keep them in a segregated camp without any freedom of movement, and clear a large part of Gaza in order to settle there with new settlements? Or are we after a certain change in the basic situation? I think that this government is not after a basic situation, a basic change in the situation. So it will just repeat itself.